So we got the flow diagrams covered, so the next logical step is go to the wireframe. Let's do it. Okay, so a quick definition. A wireframe is basically a blueprint of your interface. And what this means is that it's a very low fidelity representation of what's gonna be on the screens. And because of that being the blueprint and being very non-detailed, it's often also called information architecture because it tells you where the information is gonna be, but it doesn't really tell you how it's gonna be presented. And before we dive into the validity of wireframes in the modern times, let's cover the basic types. So there are two main versions of the wireframes. There's low fidelity wireframes and high fidelity wireframes. And there are some misconceptions around that. And some people think that the low fidelity wireframes are actually those flip chart scribbles, but they're not really wireframes. They're useless for everything. They're just completely impossible to understand after some time because there is no text on them and there's no actual structure. So for real, low fidelity wireframes are actually wireframes made in a design tool like Sketch or Figma or Axure or anything else, and they are basically a blueprint representation of the functionalities. And there are a couple of levels in which you can actually define their fidelity without really going into the graphics design. Because in some cases it can be just a series of boxes everywhere on the screen, and it kind of just tells you, okay, this is gonna be the menu, and this is gonna be the news section, and this is gonna be the authors and things like that. And yeah, this is very low fidelity. You know that the news section is gonna be here, but you don't have any definitions of what's gonna be in it, except for maybe the news. So the next level would probably be like middle fidelity or mid fidelity, and those are still represented as gray boxes, but they're a little bit more detailed. So in the news section you actually see the title, the category, the date, the author, and possibly like a little snippet of the text itself, and a read more button and some social media shares and things like that. And of course they're still represented as boxes or just text, so it's not gonna be a design just yet, but it tells you where to put these things in the design. And then high fidelity wireframes are those very precise wireframes. And it used to be that they were still the gray ones from before, but right now with the tools going as far as having very powerful design libraries in your tools, it's actually pointless, because I think that high fidelity wireframes are currently the same thing, or can be the same thing as the final designs. Because if you have a pre-made design system, you can actually create something very high quality by just dragging and dropping. And that kind of leads me to the main problem with the wireframes. They were good when the design tools weren't as good, but right now you can do many things just as fast and with a lot more fidelity. But before we get to that, let's talk about the reason for the wireframes. Like, the main reason that the people supporting the gray wireframes have is that you're not focusing on the visuals, so you're not focusing on the colors, but instead you can put all your mental capacity into just where things are, and maybe if you can move something to some other place. And that is understandable and it makes some sense, but at the same time, I think that this is basically right now, with the design tools that we have and with the possibilities of design libraries and design systems, it's just wasting time, because you can create something just as quickly but with a lot more detail in it. And you can even create a design system that's black and white if you don't really want to focus on colors, but it's still good to use really nice looking components for that. So have those wireframes look almost as good as the design, and if you want to strip them of the color, you can do that, sure. But don't make ugly boxes with ugly arrows in them and everything completely misaligned, because even looking at it, your perception is jumping between those elements and you're not really seeing the blueprint, you're seeing how bad it looks, and you can't really escape that. They say, those wireframe enthusiasts, they say that they can look beyond the ugly, but they really can't, because nobody can. We see and we are judging with our eyes every time. Build out the wireframes with the tools that you have, and then add the complexity, add the color, add the right fonts and everything else, but you can do it in the same space. The main reason for wireframes at all is to actually get into a clickable prototype. And a clickable prototype is basically connecting parts of those wireframes, like a button, to another screen, like a screen that should appear after you click the button. So this is basically the main goal. And if you're making your wireframe using a design system or a design library, you can actually replace it with the already colored, nice final design and have all the connections really pre-made. So you can test the very initial prototype on black and white boxes, but then you can switch it to a high fidelity design, the very sort of final looking thing, and you can still test it. So the main reason to actually use really good looking wireframes, almost close to the final designs, is that if you're gonna test it on the users, those users are not gonna get it that it's a wireframe. They will just think it's an ugly gray product. So wireframes had their time, but I don't really think that they're as needed anymore. So anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, click the like button and share the video, and see you next time. Cheers!